it's okay to take a break. I've had friends that have taken a break in between their PhDs to just, step back and reflect. It's okay to do it. The priority is that, your health, your mental health has to be stable for you to do any other thing. If that isn't, it's okay to take a step back, reflect, and come back later on.
Hey Ruth, thank you so much for agreeing to be here. We are not taking that for granted. And karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sawa
Yeah.
sawa. Where are you currently based?
Yeah, so currently a PhD student at the University of Oxford in the UK. Yeah, so that's where I am currently.
Okay. You mentioned you are a PhD student. What are you researching? What are you PhDing in?
Yeah, so my PhD is called Molecular and Cellular Medicine. But to summarize what I do, I'm mostly doing research on human genetics, and I'm particularly interested in a region within our immune system that is called HLA. And this
Mm.
region is important for autoimmune and infectious diseases. So my research is just centered around understanding the genetics of this region and its association to infectious and autoimmune diseases.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
I don't think I think I've just gotten a rough picture, but
Yeah.
assuming we are pitching this show to my grandma, nitamwambia Ruth anasomea nini?
Yeah, that's usually one of the hardest question, yeah, breaking it
Yeah.
down to your grandma or someone that doesn't have an idea of what you're doing. But like I'll say, essentially what I'm trying to do is to understand why, the body's immune system is like the army or an army of soldiers. The way an army protects a country or a nation against invaders is the same way our immune system protects us against things like diseases or any invaders that may attack us as the body, right? So my work is just centered around understanding a particular segment of the immune system. So in a similar manner, where you can say we have an army, but then we have the navy, we have the air force, we have the ones that are on the ground, right? So for this case, I am looking at one segment that is particularly or associated or linked to you either getting or you being at a risk of getting an autoimmune disease. So probably some of you might have heard of type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. So those are autoimmune diseases. It's a disease where your body is sort of fighting against itself. So it's not a disease where you can say you are infected by a bacterial infection or a virus. It's actually your own body cells fighting against itself. So they result to things like type 2 diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm just trying to
Mm.
understand this particular region and the reason, or trying to understand the link between this segment and you know autoimmune diseases, so like rheumatoid arthritis. And for some cases, I'm also looking at infectious diseases, things like malaria or HIV. Yeah. So basically, think about the army. And then the body's immune system is the army. Then within the army, there is the navy. So HLA could be like a navy, and then it's trying to sort of like the link between the body and these infectious diseases. So the link between, of course, the people and the invaders. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for breaking that down. Then I'm interested to know, like, wherever people are researching or wherever their careers are, I'm always interested to know how they got into that. So for me, how I got into engineering, I like to say a lot, was pure influence. I think by mistake, I want to say, because it was just influence
Mhm.
from my brothers. And then I traveled that route down, and here I am. How did you get interested in this field, in this
Yeah.
side, yeah, of medicine, research?
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a medical doctor.
Okay.
When you're growing up and you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Then I was like, yeah, I want to be a doctor. I grew up around the hospital most of my time. So I grew up with the logic or the notion that I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Yeah, I want to help people in the hospitals and cure diseases and things like that. So, that's ambition until when you get to high school. And then, there's also the uh, government entry level for certain courses as well. So, yeah, I didn't get into the cutoff for medicine, so I wasn't able to do it based on the government cutoff, and also my parents were not in a position to pay for self what is it called, self sponsorship. So yeah, there was
Yeah.
no way I could do medicine. So then I thought probably I could venture into the science field, so still do medical sort of related research, but then on the non-clinical aspect side of it, as opposed to dealing with the patients. So dealing with the data, dealing with the background, not background, what is it, the back end, yeah, so not facing them directly. So that's how I ended up doing like science. So my undergrad degree was in microbiology, and then while doing microbiology, I sort of like did an internship at ISIPE. So those of
Mm.
you who are from Kenya would know what ISIPE is. It's a research institute in Kasarani. And while I was there, I picked an interest in bioinformatics. And this is because, when I was growing up in primary and high school, I was introduced to computing. So I even did it as, when you're in high school, you get to choose an extra subject, whether you want to do foreign languages, business studies, computer, whatever. So our school we were privileged to have the computer studies both in primary and high school. So I got to do it both in primary and high school. And I think I picked interest in both medicine and computing while still young. So when I learned about bioinformatics while at ICP, I was like, oh, amazing. So I could actually combine these two interests into one. And that's how I ended up switching from the wet lab aspect to the dry lab aspect, because this gave me an opportunity to explore the computational side and look at things from how do we make sense of, right now we are in an era where there is a lot of massive amount of data being generated from clinical research and non-clinical research. So how do we make sense of that data in terms of coming up with interventions in the medical context? So yeah, so then I settled for bioinformatics. And right now I've switched a bit to statistical genetics, which is more of using statistics in the genetics arena and just trying to understand the genetics base of disease rather than looking at it from the microbes perspective in terms of the viruses and bacteria. Yeah. So still
Mm.
doing computational work, but then in the context of genetics. Yeah.
Okay, okay. That is interesting. And if you were, I'm also curious to know, like many people have multiple interests in terms of career. If assuming you are not able to pursue molecular medicine or
Mm.
bioinformatics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Assuming you are not pursuing any of these, what else
Yeah.
would you consider? Like what can you see yourself
Yeah.
doing?
So, I mean, one thing as a scientist is that there is a lot of, diversions that you could take. And, when I was still doing my undergrad, I picked a lot of interest in different things. So there were things like epidemiology, looking at pandemics, epidemics, and all these sort of like infections that occur, particularly the ones that spread, from one person to the other, like for instance COVID-19 that we've recently had. So I had picked an interest in epidemiology, right? And there's also the looking at the global health aspect of things as well. So I could also have probably done modeling for infectious diseases, and probably ventured into the policy aspect. You understand? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of angles I could have picked. At some point, I even dived into the malaria research. Right now I mentioned that I'm doing more of genetics rather than the microbe perspective, but then I would also have ventured into malaria research, and did the public health or global health perspective of malaria research, or ventured into the policy aspect of malaria research. So yeah, there are a lot of things I could have done along the way, but I think for me, like I mentioned before, because I had interest in human genetics research, and also I had interest in computing. That is the reason I stuck to what I chose to do right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a decision I think that if going back, I still would have made the same decision. But if
Mm-hmm.
probably if I wasn't given that particular chance, sometimes you wanna do things, but then probably you don't get that research project, or you don't get that funding, or you don't get that scholarship. So you're like, okay, there's something else that I could get that has an opening. Yeah. So if I had not gotten this opening and had gotten an opening in modeling for infectious diseases, then I would have taken that angle because it's something that I had an interest for. Yeah, so I think I would still do research, but maybe just have done it from a different angle, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you are very strongly in medical research.
Yes, I would definitely stick with medical research, but just
Okay.
probably have done it, yeah, from
All
different
right.
angles, from the policy aspect.
Mm-hmm. 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 That makes sense. All right. So I want to ask another question. There will be so many why, and we
Mm,
just try to understand your choices, and hopefully, our audience will learn a thing or two from your journey. So the next why is, and the reason why I'm asking this is, when I was writing the PhD journey book, I
mm,
interviewed my friends, many of them, and I was asking them. So those who went the PhD route, I was asking them, why did you decide to do a PhD? Was it by mistake? Was it by coercion? Was it
mm,
by design? And then those who didn't do the
yeah.
PhD, they also told me why they didn't do a PhD. So I'm curious to know, you are now a second year PhD student.
Yes. Yes.
Now, why did you decide to do a PhD?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say, if you wanna get into science, or if you wanna pursue the science career, PhD is baseline. It's not like something that you would say I would skip and still maneuver the scientific field. It's like a baseline, so it's sort of like where you start from and then proceed up the ladder. So if you wanna venture off into becoming a PI and leading your own lab, there's no way you're doing that without a PhD. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you
Mm-hmm.
wanna dive into, because mostly the path is usually, PhD, postdoc, and then you build up and become, senior scientist, and then probably end up as a PI. So PhD is, Apple. Yeah, my Swahili is kicking in.
Hakuna
PhD.
shida. It's all right. We can mix. Eh? Ancestors are becoming.
Yeah. So PhD, the PhD is sort of like a baseline. Unless you wanna do industry, then maybe they might not require a PhD. But then if you have a PhD, then it puts you at an added advantage compared to someone who doesn't have. So you can easily, if you have PhD and experience, you can easily get into these pharmaceutical companies, like Novo Nordisk, and the rest. So yeah, I think for science, PhD is baseline. It's not debatable. I mean, that's my opinion before someone
Yeah,
comes for my neck. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And you wanted to be in research.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
like I clearly mentioned, at first, I've always been interested in medicine and
Mm-hmm.
medical research. So
Yes.
having ventured, the diversion from being a medical doctor and venturing into medical research, I think it was I would say it was a good thing because thinking about it now, I got a chance to work in the hospital for a few months, for 3 months, and I just then realized that if I had opted to be a doctor, this is not something that was sustainable for me, because you have to deal with um blood, number one. Then number two, you have to deal with the pressures, that when patients are coming in, and they are in critical condition. And then you have to also deal with the mental uh strength of breaking down news to family members when their patients when they are whatever kids have
Mm-hmm.
passed away, and also, I was privileged to be in the maternity wing for a few weeks as well, and just seeing the sort of rush, pressure, pain, crying. I was like, this is a lot. I cannot deal with this. So I
Yeah.
think for me the diversion was key. I'll still make the impact I wanted to make in the medical field, but I don't have to be on the front line. I don't have to see a patient, right? But if I can come up with an or contribute to an intervention that would go a long way in saving a life, then that's more than fulfillment for me. So I would
Yeah.
still do medical research from whatever angle it is, but I have to stick with medical research. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why for me, a PhD was, not debatable. It's something that I would have done, even though probably not at this point, but I still would have done a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That makes sense. Now, another why is why now we know why medical research. We know why
Mm,
PhD, why you chose to do a PhD at this point in
yeah.
your career. And another question would be why the UK and particularly why Oxford Uni?
I mean, it's Oxford.
I mean,
I'm
it could be
joking.
Harvard. It could be Harvard.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
it could be UON.
yeah. Well, the UK one, I think. I would say it's because of the opportunities, the resources that the UK offers in terms of science capacity. So in as much as I would have loved to stay back in the country and do my PhD from there, there is a lot of limitations that you would face as as a PhD student or as a postgrad student in the country, except for a few exceptions. But it's majorly challenging doing a PhD in the country, especially for science, because science is very expensive. Yeah. So looking at it from all angles, in as much as there is the aspect of you paying your fees, that's just the minimum or the baseline. But then if you're doing the wet lab aspect, then it means you gotta cater for the reagents. And then there's usually the when you're back in the continent, there's usually a long turnover of you waiting for when you request for reagents and before they show up. So you realize that you might waste 6 months of your PhD time waiting for reagents to be shipped from abroad so that you can be able to do your research, as opposed to someone who's here in the UK or anywhere else abroad, that when they make a request, getting the reagents is like by a snap of a hand, and then they'll get their reagents maybe in a week or so. So and then looking at also the dry lab aspect, um because you need resources in terms of cluster access, server access, internet, a network, stable network. So if you don't have like stable network, a stable internet, and access to cloud server, so where the big data is being stored, it's going to be challenging for you to be able to process your data. And doing a master's back in the continent, and I had a privilege of doing my work remotely from South Africa. So I had access to a cloud server, and I had all these resources at my disposal. But the rest of my colleagues did not have that sort of privilege as me, right? So, because you need GPUs, you need proper CPUs, you need proper memory, you need proper internet access. So looking at just those limitations, and then looking at comparing it to what you can get abroad, you'll be like, okay, it's fine. Let me go study, find proper funding, and then I can come back and contribute in the country or in the continent, based on the grants that I get, and then I can bring them back, rather than saying I will stick in the continent or in the country, and then you have all these limitations and you end up doing a PhD for 7 years or for 8 years. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think for me it's more about the resources that are at your disposal, as a PhD in the country and abroad. If
Mm-hmm.
you get those resources, well and good, you can do it from home. Home is best always. But otherwise, I would say it's easier to get those resources abroad, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also easier to get proper supervisory support, because you sort of like get linked to people that have the right skills or the right knowledge that would properly supervise you in the project that you choose, compared to back at home where you might end up being linked to someone that has no idea of what you're doing, and you literally have to be the student and be the supervisor of your project. You understand?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you get these things back at home, do them. But otherwise, I think it's easier just doing them where you can get the opportunities. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just about what is available for you at that moment, wherever the resources, the human capacity is available for you, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
But so for you, like I was asking, why Oxford and not say Harvard, for instance, considering they are,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Oxford, because of the project that I was interested in. For me, it was more about the project. It was more about the
Mm-hmm.
supervision, compared to just the school, right? I mean, the school
Okay.
is also an added advantage because, you know, it's Oxford, yeah. But then for me, mostly it was about the project, because sometimes you get a scholarship to pursue a PhD or a master's, but then you end up with a project that you're not passionate about or you're not interested in, but you're just doing it because you got it as an offer, and at the end of the day you look back and say, I wasted my 4 years or I wasted my
Mm-hmm.
3 years. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was more of getting something that I was actually passionate about, getting a supervisor that I had actually, reached out before I even thought about Oxford. You understand? So we
Yeah.
had already sort of connected before I even applied to join Oxford. So yeah, that was the reason. So Oxford was a plus for me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, all right. So that makes sense. So you are following the project that you were interested in, and it happened to be at Oxford.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also, can we talk about funding? How did you get funding for your PhD?
Yeah. I would say I was privileged again to get the funding that I'm on, because I'm the first person on such a funding, meaning that
Mm-hmm.
I had probably applied for this a year back, I would
Mm-hmm.
not have access to that fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why sometimes I say, things, when the time is right, things just happen the way they are meant to happen. Thinking back, I had applied for like PhDs in the previous year, but I didn't get in. But when I applied this particular time, and then this funding was just being launched, and then I happened to be the first person getting it, and
Okay.
um yeah, I got in. So for me, I would say, especially for schools abroad, and I can speak for Oxford because I'm here. PhD funding is very limited. Yeah. So before you apply for a PhD, make sure you do your research properly about the fundings that are available for you or what you can apply for before you actually apply for a PhD. Because in as much as you can pay a master's for yourself, a PhD is 3 to 4 years. Um, unless you're ready to, I don't want to say unless you're a billionaire, then you can pay that for yourself. But yeah, get the funding first. Get to apply for the funding before you look at the schools, or whatever you're applying for. So funding and
Mm-hmm.
the project that you're getting yourself into, two
Mm-hmm.
very things for looking out when you're applying for a PhD. So for me, it was just because the funding was being rolled out that year, and I was lucky enough to get the funding. There's nothing special I did, honestly, but yeah, I was. They were just taking one person from the African continent for that scholarship, and I happened to be that one person. So yeah,
Wow.
it was.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the name? What, if you don't mind sharing, what's the name of the scholarship? And
Yeah.
are they still taking people from the continent every year so that students can apply?
Yeah. So the scholarship is called AFOX Kennedy Trust Scholarship
Mm-hmm.
Student. So AFOX is Africa. Hey, AFOX is Africa Oxford Initiative, and then Kennedy Trust studentship, and yeah,
Mm.
the scholarship was sort of set up to ensure that at least we have one African from the continent joining the Kennedy Institute every year. Yeah, so the funding is AFOX Kennedy Trust. It's available to one African every year.
Mm.
And yeah, so I'm the first one. So it's rolling out every year. So apply for the next cycle. Make sure you apply. And
All
yeah,
right.
hopefully stick. Yeah.
We'll put you will send me a link and we'll put it in the description box so that whoever is interested can try can check it out and try. Another question that I have, and I have so many follow up questions on the PhD journey because I was on one, and there are so many things that I wish I had been told earlier on. Now I want to know even before you left Kenya for Oxford, and now looking back, you're now a second year student, so you've spent some time there. Is there one thing that you think you were not told when you
Mm,
were preparing to go to Oxford? I mean, people try and hype and they're like, oh my God,
yeah.
congratulations, you're on this journey, and you are mostly excited. But then when you get things on the ground are not the same, as we like to say, vitu kwa
Yeah.
ground ni tofauti.
It's
So
different.
yeah. So
Yeah.
is there one or more you could share more of those surprises that or things that you wish you had been told before you started this journey?
Just thinking about it actually, I think I wasn't surprised when I came to the UK because I had a few colleagues that had gone before me
Okay.
um in the to the UK. They had not come to Oxford, but they were, somewhere in the UK for their postgrad degree. So yeah, they had mentioned, this is what to expect, there's not gonna be a community the way you're used to back at home where you can knock on someone's door and be like, excuse me, help me with this and this. Yeah. And then it's gonna be cold, there are gonna be darker days, the sun sets at 3 p.m. So I would say the shock was actually seeing whatever I was being told coming into reality.
Okay.
so, so that was a shock for me, like, when you're told something as a story and then you're like, okay, you hear it as a story, but once you experience it, then it suddenly hits you and you're like, okay, that's actually true. Yani, this country, it can rain continuously, and anytime it might be,
I
the sun
know.
might be out this minute, in the next 5 minutes it's raining. And when you're told the sun sets at 3 p.m., you don't believe until when you see everything is gone dark at 3 p.m. and it hits you that, yeah, darker days are here. So yeah, I think for me the shock was more about seeing the things in reality, compared to when I just had them as a story about what to
Mm-hmm.
expect. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And is there so I like talking a lot about I don't want to say the negative side, but like things that we rarely talk about, or we don't talk about these things as often as possible. And those are, say, challenges. So I would be curious to know if there is any challenge you've been struggling with, for instance, so far in your journey as a PhD student. Is there one thing that you'd say you've been struggling with?
Yeah, I'm trying to think and see what has been actually challenging.
So I can give you my example. When I started, I struggled a lot with feeling like an imposter. Like I felt like I didn't belong, and it took me ages to really settle in and be confident in my abilities, in my
Mm.
research, in who I was. It took me ages. I think it took me 3 years. The only time I was starting
Oh.
to be really confident in the journey was in my third year. So I'm
Mm.
curious to know, like, so far, I mean, you're still young in the journey, but like, so
Mm.
far, is there something that you're
That's challenging.
struggling with? Yeah, or yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, in terms of my PhD project, actually, like I mentioned before, because it's something that, when I chose it before I actually thought about applying to Oxford. So it's something that I had a background on. So part of my master's research was sort of like a baseline for my PhD work. So I had a bit of background on
Okay.
on the kind of research I wanted to do. So I had the basics. So it was more on building up what I had. So I would say probably the challenge would be in terms of the community at the department, because back at home, you it's often when you're walking into the office and everyone is there, everyone is making noise, everyone is laughing, everyone is caring and doing this sort of stuff here and there. So there's sort of like that sort of movement in and out of the office. And then people would often ask, have you had lunch, are you okay, things like that. But here it's different. It's very rare, unless it's your supervisor. It's very rare for any other person to like randomly just ask you, have you had lunch, how are you doing today, you understand. So everyone walks into the office and it's an entire flat of computational people. Everyone has big monitors in front of them, and they just focus on that, then they leave at the end of the day. So this made me to actually shift and do most of the work from home as opposed to going to the department. And there's that sense of community that you get from interacting with people. I mean, you don't have to be there every day, but just interacting with people and speaking to them as opposed to just being alone. I would say that has been the challenging aspect of my research so far. But I think that has what has helped with that is attending these sort of departmental meetings, departmental seminars, lab meetings, because those are spaces now that are provided to network and interact with people. And then there's also the social gatherings that happen every month, so those have helped a lot. But otherwise, just considered it as on its own. Yeah. um that's the PhD. But I would say about the other things that I've been doing on the PhD, alongside the PhD, taking up leadership responsibilities and other things along the way, has I don't think there's anyone that doesn't get imposter syndrome. I don't know. Unless I don't know you. I don't. Maybe you have an IQ level. I don't know what. But I think everyone would get that, the feeling of not being enough or being good enough for anything that you take up or anything that you're committed to do. I've often got that, in as much as I took a project that I had a base or baseline or basic or on. I would still once in a while feel like, hey, I think I thought I was gonna do this, but why is it so difficult? Why is this code not, why am I not able to debug this code? You understand? Because some
Yeah.
things you just feel like, this is very easy, I should have done this like last week. Why am I still stuck on the same thing at this point in time? you know is it
Mm.
that I thought I overthought, or that I was, probably. But I think what has helped me, and even in terms of leadership, when you're taking up leadership responsibilities and you have all these responsibilities looking at you, and then you question yourself and be like, I didn't have to do this. Do I even have the mental strength to go through this? Do I have the physical capacity to do this? But then at the end of the day, you come back and discover that it's everything is in the mind. You understand? As
Yeah.
long as you decide that, okay, I have to get this done, it will work out. And then one thing that I realized has worked for me is that when I'm struggling a lot with debugging code, I just leave it. I leave it and focus on something else. Then the next day when I come back and then I realize, oh, it was just this thing that I was missing. Because at that
Mm.
time when you're in that moment of pressure, you know, your brain is telling you you're not good enough. The other part of the brain is telling you you have to debug this. The other side is telling you you're not supposed to be here in the first place. And then the other side is telling you there are actually people that believed that you could do this, and they actually gave you the chance to do it, so there is no disappointing them. So there's a lot of thoughts crossing your mind, and I think at that moment, if you just take a step back, focus on other things, and then come back to it later, you should be fine. Yeah.
Mm. Totally agree. Totally agree. Totally agree. Taking a break and yeah, let your mind rest and do the magic behind the scenes. Then you come
Yeah,
back, you'll be able to handle it. Perfect. Because you've mentioned about the leadership experiences that you've
yeah,
intentionally taken. I want us talk to us about all these things that you are doing. You are running this My Son's Journey. You are the VP, Vice President of the Africa Society of at Oxford. You and so many other things that
yeah,
I cannot even count. So
yeah.
talk to us about that. Like, why do you think those leadership roles or those things outside research are important, and particularly like why what is your interest? Why are you interested in all these leadership things and all these extracurricular activities?
Yeah, thank you for that. So for me, it's been more about giving back and paying it forward. So that has been my drive for taking up things other than or doing them alongside my PhD. You understand? So, for
Yeah.
example, the webinar series, the My Science Journey webinar series that I actually founded it when I was still in Kenya before I came to the UK, and for me, getting to where I am right now has been a product of people pushing me. It has been a product of the mentorship that I have received along the years. Yeah, I cannot just sit down or wake up one day and say that I have done all these things because of my own strength. You understand? So there's the God aspect, but there's also the aspect of people pushing you, people believing in you, people mentioning your names in spaces where you are not even present. You understand? And them trusting you to be able to carry out different responsibilities. And that has pushed me and shown me that actually I can do things, and the things that I do have a positive impact on other people's livelihood or lives. And that has been my drive for taking up responsibilities, as long as whatever I'm taking up has an impact on people. And for this context, the people that look like me, or people that are coming from the places that I have come from, um I would do them gladly. So MSJ, particularly My Science Journey, is just about giving back and paying it forward, and ensuring that in as much as I got access to all this, mentorship and networks, I can also pay it forward and give such opportunities to others. Like last week, we had I don't know whether she's a student, or we had one from the people that had joined, and I didn't even realize, because I have never met these people, some of them, yeah. But the way the girl was able to bond with the speaker, and she even mentioned that she's been looking for this speaker and looking for ways to connect to this speaker, and then there's this platform, and which has given her an opportunity to meet and connect, and the speaker was even willing to take her up for mentorship and to even link her to a job. That is success to me. That is fulfillment for me, and that's why I would take up any leadership responsibility. And I'm also vice president for the Africa Society in Oxford here, and also just taking up or doing initiatives or events that are aimed at building or ensuring that the postgraduate students or undergrad students that are identified as African or are from the African continent are able to access opportunities or events, and network with others, and to just ensure that their well-being is taken care of, so that you don't feel isolated in Oxford. That's why I took up that sort of mantle. And in May, we are going to be hosting I'm also convener for the Oxford Africa Conference. We'll be hosting it in May as well. And we will have meaningful discussions about charting Africa's path forward. So if you can get your way to Oxford, please, please, please make sure you come. It's going to be an amazing conversation, amazing discussion, amazing networks. You don't want to miss this year. Yeah. So for me, Gladys, it's about the leadership opportunities that I get myself into. It's not just about me. I look at the impact that the project or the thing that I'm the leadership role that I'm getting myself in, what what would be the impact on the people that I'm involved with. Yeah. What
Mm-hmm.
is what is the gain for others? You understand? So if there's
Yeah.
going to be gain, mostly in terms of, well-being, um survival, charting Africa's path forward, mentorship in terms of science careers, I would do it without a blink. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I mean that is really commendable, Ruth, because not everyone, as you know, not everyone is able to or has that capacity or even willingness to pause and pay it forward. So whatever you're doing is really commendable. So you keep it up.
Thank you, Gladys. Thank you.
Yeah. And also you went you I saw you in the palace. What was going on? You were shaking hands with the king, literally dining with kings and queens in London. What was going on there?
And they say I will prepare a table for you in the
Oh,
presence
I
of
think
your
your
enemies.
Lord, your table has been prepared.
uh yeah, so meeting the king, yeah. So yeah, it still bottles down to leadership. So because I serve in the executive of the African Society, and I'm Kenyan, as you can see from my headband. I'm Kenyan.
Yes.
So I was in the palace as student representative, um, basically. That was my role, representing the students in Oxford at the palace. So that's how I got to meet the king. And other than the king, I think for me the highlight was actually meeting and networking with different Kenyans that are doing, like, amazing stuff all over the UK. I didn't know that, these things you hear as stories that, we have these people that are doing this and this brilliant stuff all over the UK, and getting a chance to meet them, network with them, and form, long term networks and collaborations. That was a highlight for me. So other than just meeting King Charles, which was a privilege that I don't take for granted, honestly, it was more about also the people, the Kenyans that I met there, and the networks that I continue to build with them. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you for sharing about that, and I'm sure you will still be mingling in the coming months and years. Now let's come back to Kenya. I don't know if it's Kenya you did your masters because I saw somewhere Cape Town. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing about what you did before you left for Oxford? Your masters. What were you mastering in, and where?
Yeah. So my master's was in bioinformatics, and I was fortunate enough again to get a scholarship for it, and the scholarship was called, because right now it's no longer running because the funding
Mm.
came to the end. But the scholarship was Eastern Africa Network for Bioinformatics Training, and the aim of the project was basically to train bioinformaticians in the continent, but for this case, or for this context, in East Africa, that would be able to make sense or to analyze, you know, all this massive amount of data that is being generated in East Africa, in the continent, in the globe. So that was the aim. So the project was Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and you had an option of doing your project either in Kenya or Uganda at that time in Makerere. I chose Kenya because I was biased. I did my undergrad in Pwani University, so I was like, I might as well just continue the masters here and finish, because I had, uh, brilliant mentors. So I wasn't ready to let go. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay here for another year. So how I ended up in Cape Town is the masters program was 2 years. So the first year was the coursework, where you were supposed to do it either in Pwani University in Kenya or in Makerere in Uganda. And then the second phase was five at that time was five, but I think it sort of like increased. The second year was, you do a research project anywhere in the continent. So people would either go to Uganda, others would come to Kenya, others would go to Tanzania. So it just happened because we were randomly selecting our projects. You didn't know who the supervisor was. You didn't know where the project is going to be based. so that, to remove that biasness where people would say, I want to go to South Africa, or I want to go here, and I want to work with so and so. So the project I
Mm.
chose, which bottles down to human genetics that I mentioned I had an interest for, happened to be in Cape Town, and I happened to work with one of the best brains in bioinformatics, Professor Nikki Mulder. She was my supervisor. So that's how, the second phase was based at UCT. But because it was during lockdown era, I couldn't travel to Cape Town at that time. I got to travel later on, but I worked remotely from Kenya at ECP, and like I mentioned, I had access to their remote cloud server, so I didn't have issues in terms of cloud server. And then ECP provided, internet access, so I also didn't have issues with that. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Cape Town. And um, being in Isipe actually provided another opportunity for me to do another year of capacity building and mentorship initiative at Isipe. So I was in charge of the bioinformatics mentorship and incubation program for a year before I left for the UK, where we were taking students that have finished undergrad, training them for 4 months, training them basic bioinformatics, then also training them soft skills and mentoring them in the bioinformatics era. So this was also a very, good platform for me to also give, or to pay it forward, or to give back for the things that I have.
So that I don't forget, I want, because when I meet students, I don't know if it's the same question they ask you, and they ask of all these opportunities, and they keep asking, where do you get the scholarships? They're asking, give me a scholarship, show me a scholarship. So the scholarship you got, although it's no longer active for
Yeah,
masters, and
yeah,
also the one you got, the AFOX one, or even
yeah,
others you had applied, where do
yeah.
you get this? Where do you get this information?
Yeah, there are thousands. There are like so many websites that have these scholarship opportunities. Maybe to just highlight one key one, PhD. What is it called? PhD what? Uh,
Positions?
no, 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 no. I've forgotten.
No
Um,
worries. We
um, that's actually where my PhD project was advertised. That's where the
what
AFOX Kennedy Trust.
what we will do, you will send me the links later, and then I'll
Okay.
drop all of them in the description box so that whoever is interested can check them out. Okay, Sawa. So
Yeah.
let's go to you mentioned Pwani. Is that where you did your undergrad as well? That's where you did your undergrad.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to market my university here as
Please,
well.
please.
If you're looking for a science, what is it called, career, you want to pursue a career in science, you want to do a science course, the place to study is Pwani University. We have a track record, whether it's in undergrad or masters. We have a track record of having, students who've gone through Pwani University. They're all over the globe, not only in the country. They are in the UK, in the US, everywhere. I mean, I don't think it's in my capacity to share, the list of the track record, but there is a track record. So just to say that the mentorship, the teaching curriculum that is available in Pwani University is so far the best in the country.
Well, continue selling Pwani Uni. The follow-up question, the follow-up question I wanted to ask about Pwani Uni, because I know whatever you said, I think is true, because I've met people from Pwani, medical research, and now I'm curious to know, why do you think Pwani stands out, especially with medical research?
Like I mentioned, one, the training curriculum. I
Mhm.
think especially for the bioinformatics masters, because it was optimized at an African level. So the scholarship program I was part of was a smaller project, which was part of a global project that was called the Human Hereditary and Health in Africa project. It went on for 10 years, and within that big project, there was the Pan African Bioinformatics Network, which was just aimed at building bioinformatics capacity in Africa, and our scholarship program was part of that. So, because of that, the course curriculum was optimized to very, very high standards. And
Mm-hmm.
anyone that has gone, actually everyone that has gone through the program in the first, I was part of the second cohort. Everyone in the first cohort, the second cohort, and third cohort are all either working or studying abroad. There's just few of them in the country, maybe like three, but everyone else is abroad. So you can imagine the sort of skills, because I don't think there's any way you would get into a program abroad if your skills are not good enough, if that makes sense. So it just displays or shows the standards of skills that we picked, and them being useful not only in the continent but also globally. So anyone that is thinking of doing a bioinformatics masters, Pwani University, don't even think twice. If you're doing if you're thinking of doing any other medical related biomedical research sort of courses, so things like microbiology, biochemistry, molecular biology, Pwani University. Don't say you did not know. I am telling you now so that you know. So
Yeah.
that you know that one university. So yeah, in addition to just the training curriculum, I would say, Gladys, for us, for Pony University, it's the mentorship. We have an amazing cohort of lecturers that they not only give their time to teach, but they also put in a lot of their time to mentor their students. I was privileged to be mentored by some of them. I will not mention their names so that they, one of them would literally say, "Oh, you didn't mention me," so I'm not gonna mention names. But there's been so many of them that have had an impact on me, particularly. Um, so yeah, so there's the mentorship aspect, and there's also the training curriculum. And also because we are just across, we are bordering Cambry Wellcome Trust. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
whether you've heard about that. And Cambry Wellcome Trust is also like the hub of research in the continent, medical research for this case, mostly malaria research, but generally medical research. And it's funded by the Wellcome Trust, which is Wellcome Trust UK. So they have enough funding, they don't need to worry about funding. So it gives them the sort of space to think more about research questions that have like proper impact, not only in the country but in the continent and in the globe. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, being in Pwani, you get linked to the scientists that are working in Cambridge. So you not only have the network at the university, you also have the network at the research institute. So you end up building a wide scope of potential collaborators, potential supervisors, potential networks. Most of us that were in Pwani either did postgraduate diploma there or a master's project there. Some of them are still doing their PhDs there. So yeah, it's that's the third aspect. So the
Mm-hmm.
training curriculum, the mentorship aspect, and also it being next to having or also it's not just about being close to, it's also about the relationship between Pwani University and Cambridge Wellcome Trust, which
Mm-hmm.
has also supported the biomedical research or the medical research in Pwani. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
go to Pwani University.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Yeah, you've definitely marketed it very well.
Yeah,
I mean, and I mean, the
the good
audience can see
ambassador.
the product, so then the product can.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
All right. Now,
yeah,
so when you were in undergrad, I imagine you were
yeah,
still doing all sorts of things outside class.
yes, yes.
What were you doing?
In undergraduate, I was also a vice chairperson of the Pwani University Bioscience Student Association, and we were also organizing um, small seminar series for bioscience students in the university. And other than that, we also collaborated with Cambry Wellcome Trust to organize the first ever science symposium in the university. That
Mm,
happened during my time.
wow.
So and it's something that is now happening subsequently.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was that, and the other things were not academic.
No, please, can you share them? We need none. We don't want to talk about books only. Surely it will be boring.
Yeah.
We need some spice. So tell us.
Yeah, I was also in the executive of the Christian Union there. I was in charge of IT. So going back to my computing passion and skills that I gained, at this point they are the skills that I had gained in high school and just built them. Yeah. So I was in charge of IT and media.
Mm-hmm.
While at it. Yeah,
Okay. Were you dating
that's it.
at some point
Oh,
in campus?
I was also a peer counselor and a
Okay.
peer mentor and
All
a peer
right.
mentor.
All right.
Yeah. So,
Tell us about the
yeah,
social life. Campus boyfriend.
oh, yo.
It's important to talk about that.
uh, I would say I had a very, I wouldn't say boring. I was about to say I had a very boring social life, but I wouldn't say boring. I
Okay.
think for me, undergraduate was mostly, if not doing science, I'll be in the Christian Union
Okay.
or be in the peer counseling staff. So those were my three, you know, rotating around. So unfortunately, I wasn't chaotic. I was a very reserved student. So
We
no
cannot
drama,
relate. We cannot
no
relate, Ruth.
drama.
We
I
cannot
can't
relate.
relate. Yeah, no, definitely no drama from undergrad. So yeah.
All right,
I
all
can't
right.
relate. Yeah.
And if you were to, so I like asking this question because if personally, if I
Mhm.
was to go back to undergrad
Yeah.
with the knowledge that I have now, I think
Yeah.
I would kind of carry my life a bit differently. And what I
Mhm.
mean is, I think I'll do more of experimenting with things because the stakes are a bit low when you are in undergrad and you have a lot of opportunities and a lot of time and flexibility, and you are in your early 20s, no much risks involved. And I think if I
Yeah.
was to go back, I would definitely try to experiment with many things
Mm.
because I think I was a bit conservative and I went to school. I think, like you mentioned, I went to school to study and go to church and then graduate with first class and be a good girl.
Me and you same WhatsApp group.
And then although me, the person I dated though, so that we will be different in that way. We'll be different in that way. But like out, but I by and large, I think I just went to campus and did like whatever took me there. But at the same time, I feel like there are just
Yeah.
too much opportunities, like for networking. Like you have these amazing young people from all over the country, like amazing young minds. It kind of happened by mistake in my case because we used to
Yeah.
have a study group, and those friends we've maintained contact until today, and we do amazing things together. But I'm like, if I was more intentional about connecting with more people, I think my life would be different. So anyway, I'm curious to know if
Yeah.
you were taken back to Pwani
Yeah.
from CU and all those leadership things and bioinformatics, is there
Yeah.
something you would do differently?
I actually picked bioinformatics when I was almost finishing undergrad. So
Okay.
when I was still in undergrad, my interest was still on epidemiology and all this sort of like, microbiology stuff. And then I didn't say that I didn't date, just in
Ah,
case someone's son will
okay.
not come and say I denied him.
It's good to clarify. All right, all right.
Let's clarify things.
Okay.
I dated, yeah. It just didn't work out, but I dated in campus, yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then going back to your question about what I would have done different, I was also part of a study group. There was like 10 of us that formed the study group, and our aim was getting first class. And from the study group, I think it's just from the people that got first class, it's just one person that wasn't in our study group. Everyone else was in the study group, so that
Mm,
was a plus. That was a good thing.
mm,
But yeah, I mean, like you, I think I would relate and say, at first, I was thinking there's nothing I would have changed. But, after listening to you, I think probably I could have taken a risk and probably started a business, or probably, expanded my circle to not only, class and see you, probably just also relate with people in different circles, because I think that's also very important, and trying to understand people from different social circles. So that's something I missed. because my circle was either the people that we were studying with, mostly the 10 people,
Mm.
um and then of course the others that I was just seeing in class, and then the other circle was the CU, and then the other bit was my supervisors and my mentors in school. And even with the peer counseling and mentoring, I don't think I had a circle there. It was more about, we were trained together, but afterwards it was more like personal initiative on, the mentoring stuff and the counseling stuff, and then talking to the, the student counselor, the uni student counselor, the uni. So it wasn't, there wasn't a circle basically. So yeah, probably going back, I would have been more intentional about
Yeah,
getting to know people from different social circles.
yeah,
I didn't. Thinking about it right now, I would have gotten into campus politics, but I was just so scared of involving myself with campus politics, considering, the things that I was seeing happening on the ground and the things that you needed to do to
yeah,
get to those positions. Then I was like, this is not a boundary that I wanna cross. But thinking
yeah.
about it right now, probably um I would have made more, networks from these sort of circles. But yeah,
Sure, sure,
that's
sure.
something.
In fact, I wanted, when you mentioned that you are the VP of AfriSoc, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask, kama that spirit started from undergrad, but now you've answered it.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, at some point I contemplated I was gonna run for department, what is it called, head or whatever,
Mm.
in charge of department something, student in that is in charge of the, the biological sciences department. But then I was like, I do not want all the drama that comes with, going through this.
Yeah.
But thinking about it right now, I mean, I'm a bit sort of compensated with the Africa Society, but I think I would have had more impact if I had gotten engaged at undergrad level. So that
Mm-hmm.
is something I would change probably.
Okay.
And sort of like going back to the social circles, ensuring that, the social circles are not just um the the religious aspect or the school aspect, but also, I mean, other people as well, and learning how to deal with different people. So
Mm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so if you're still in undergrad, make sure you explore, because this is your exploration years. Make sure you explore so that when you get to such a level as us, you don't say, I wish. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's actually why, because I know most of my audience are in campus, and hopefully someone is in campus can listen to this. And the reason I was asking this question is just so that
Mm.
they kind of hear this, and they get the challenge, and hopefully they explore more, or at least
Yeah.
utilize most of the resources there. Yeah,
Absolutely.
in fact, I'm always I'm so inspired by some of the undergrad, particularly undergrad, like campus guys who are even leveraging social media, and they're doing amazing things. Like someone just started TikTok, and they are now, I don't know, 1 million plus, and they have all these gigs,
Yeah.
and they are still
Yeah.
studying whatever they are studying in school.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, and
Yeah.
especially with this age of social media, like there is just so much
Yeah.
one can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That's true.
if
That's true.
if you like photography, you could be taking photos, and you make a TikTok or an Instagram account and grow it.
Yeah.
You never know where it
Yeah.
takes you.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true. That's
yeah.
true.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so another question that I like asking is, when you were in undergrad,
Mm.
had you thought about where you would be, like even this PhD thing happening now? Was it something that was in your mind when you were in undergrad, or were you planning to like finish and get a job? Is it something that you had thought about, where you are when you were in undergrad and where you are now? Is it something you had thought about?
Yeah. So I would say it's something that has happened, like has come subsequent. Like it's happened stepwise. It's not something that I had initially thought. For me, it was something that was happening stepwise. So when I was in undergrad, I wasn't thinking about PhD. it was something that I was seeing when I hear someone is doing a PhD. I was like, oh, you're doing a PhD. That's amazing. But I never thought that, okay, this is something that I would do. But I was thinking about a master's. And the thing about me is that I have been to school back to back. So I haven't had the chance to properly work. So the experience I have is of school back to back. So yeah, so my someone might think that, I sat down and decided, after undergrad, master's, PhD, and get done. I mean, it's a good thing because thinking about it, you just get done with the schooling and then focus on other things, right? But if you have an opportunity to work first and then come back and learn, that's also something that you could do. It works differently for different people. You just need to figure out what works best for you. So for me, when I was in undergrad, I thought about a master's. So I started applying for the master's opportunities. I actually applied to just one. I don't know why I'm saying master's opportunities. Master's opportunity. When I was in undergrad in third year. So I remember in third year, Cambridge Wellcome Trust was running a program for immunology, and then the Eastern African Network for Bioinformatics Training was running the masters for bioinformatics. They had piloted the first cohort and they were advertising for the second cohort. So I remember at that point I knew I wanted to do a master's, but I was a bit confused about which angle to take. Do I take the immunology side? Do I take the bioinformatics side? But then coming back to the question, to what I had talked about, mentors and mentorship, and who if you have good mentors, then they can help you navigate such things. So I went to my mentor and said, these are the options that I have. How do I navigate through this? I'm thinking of applying to both, or I'm thinking of doing both. And we had this conversation, and at the end of it I was like, you have to do something that you're passionate about. You just don't want to do something because there's an opportunity to do it. So what I was passionate about was bioinformatics. So I actually applied to the bioinformatics program only. I didn't apply to the immunology one, although both of them were options that I could have applied to and gotten into. So I remember even one of my friends asking me, you don't have a fallback plan. What's your plan B? If you don't get into the bioinformatics program, what do you plan as your next step? And then I was like, that's my plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D. Like, there's no failing. I have to get into the bioinformatics program. I realized that that's a very bad mentality to have. I do not encourage anyone else to have such a mentality. It was just something that worked for me. But, it's not assured that it's gonna work. So I only applied to the bioinformatics masters and got in, and that's what I did. Then when I was doing the masters, then I thought, okay, now what next? Do I want to work? Do I want to do a PhD? And then thinking about it, I'm like, I can actually do a PhD and get a PhD before I hit 30. So then I forget about studying and then focus slowly on working. So let's do a PhD. And then I started applying with the help of at that time, during my first year, I applied to this mentorship program. I'm gonna mention her because she really helped me. She's called Dr. Carol Ibe. She's Nigerian. She was running a mentorship program. She leads the JR Biotech Foundation, so you might wanna Google that. But she was piloting this mentorship program in the continent. At that point, she was a postdoc in Cambridge, and she and Dr. Noor were looking to mentor exceptional African students and ensure that they get into, what are they called? What are these universities called?
We could just say top.
Ivy League.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Ivy League universities, yeah. So I think there was like 10 of us that went through the interview and got into the mentorship program, and Dr. Carol helped me a lot with not writing, with reviewing the applications and going through the entire application program. I had never thought about applying to Oxford. Those are things that you see and you're like, Uko, those are levels that I can't get into, right? But she's the one person that made me think about applying to Cambridge and applying to Oxford. She even helped me pay for my application fee to
Oh.
Cambridge. I initially applied to Cambridge before applying to Oxford. So yeah, That's the power of mentorship, and that's why I also get myself involved in a lot of things to do with mentorship, because I have had people that have genuinely believed in me and have genuinely, worked with me throughout this science journey. So yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Carol. Anyway, getting back to my point. So then I started thinking about the PhD when I was doing the masters. Yeah. So for me, it wasn't something that when I was in undergrad I thought I would do. It's something that I thought about when I was, when you get to that level and you're like, when you're in high school and you're like, I just need to get into campus. When you're in undergrad, then you're like, I could actually do a master's. You know, then when you're in master's, you're like, okay, a master's is doable. So meaning a PhD can also be done. So let's do it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the story for me.
Perfect, perfect. And I think that
Yeah.
applies to many people. Although I know some few people who had kind of had their life or their career kind of properly and nicely mapped out, and they knew they were going to do this in undergrad in this particular uni and
Yeah.
that. But I know for many people it's kind of a slow evolving process, and you just have to take like one baby step at a time. And then at every stage, you just like scan around and see what you can do, the best you can do there, as you
Yeah.
as you figure out what next. And sure, slow but sure, you
Yeah.
will
And I think,
slowly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we also need to mention that having a break in between is also okay.
Yes.
If you can take a break between the undergrad and masters, take a break.
Yeah.
If you can take a break between the masters and PhD, take it.
Yes.
Because sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mean, for some of us, it works because I personally have had the privilege of having the best supervisors in the world. My supervisors from undergrad, masters, PhD have been the absolute best. So my sort of like research work has been, smooth. It has been a smooth sailing because um I have had, tangible and what is the word? My English dictionary is failing.
Ni sawa.
Because yeah, so I have had smooth sailing because I have had like proper support, intentional support, tangible support from my supervisors. That's why I've been able to do back to back. But it's important to take a step back and think about the project that you want to get yourself involved in. Is it something that you want to do? Do you have proper supervisory support for it? Do you have all the support you need in terms of funding? Don't just get into a program because that's the opportunity that is, lacking around, because you might get yourself messed up. I know I had a colleague that had to drop out of the PhD because they couldn't, deal with this with a supervisor, or they couldn't grapple with the project. So make sure whatever you're signing yourself up for, you can do it. So it's okay to take a break. I've had friends even in Oxford that have taken a break in between their PhDs to just, step back and reflect. And
Mm-hmm.
even in other institutes like, the Welcome Sanger Institute in Cambridge, I've had another friend that has also taken a step back from their PhD. It's okay to do it. The priority is that, your health, your mental health has to be stable for you to do any other thing. If that isn't, it's okay to take a step back, reflect on the PhD, and then come back later on. If you happen to get pregnant along the way, take a step back. It's okay. The PhD is not your life. Yeah, it's just like a part of it, a part of the process. So you have your whole entire life to live. So you can always take a step back from academics and then come back later on when you have the mental strength to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Totally agreed. Totally agreed. And before we move on into the last part of our today's episode, let's just mention where did you do your high school, just for the sake of high schoolers who might be listening to this, and they
Yeah.
whatever grade, even the form four leavers, right? They might be watching,
Yeah.
and I want you to mention the school name and the grade you scored,
Huh?
just so that they can see
Yeah.
themselves in younger you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I went to Kaimosi Girls High School. Where are the relations?
Ah,
I'm kidding. Yeah. Yeah, so it's in the western side of Kenya. I got a B plus in high school, and then I got posted to Pwani to do microbiology for undergrad. Yeah,
Okay, excellent.
yeah,
Now, from all the way from Kaimosi in Western Kenya
yeah.
to Oxford, what is one lesson you've learned in life?
Never give up. One lesson: never give up. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
stay resolute. Like, do not allow any step back to be like the reason you'd say I'm not doing it. Most of us, just speaking from experience, we've had a lot of step backs, right? We've tried things that have not worked out, but that hasn't been an excuse to say that I am no longer doing science, or I'm no longer doing this and this. Even if you look at the billionaires and their stories, I don't think you can single out someone who's never had his own share of challenges before getting to where they are. So yeah, it's okay to fail. I think that is one thing that people need to realize, that failure is part of life. It is okay to fail, but what is not okay is for you to remain there where you are. So you might fail, right? But what are you doing afterwards? Right? How are
Mm.
you picking yourself after the situation or the challenges that you encounter? So for me, it will be, do not give up on yourself, right? I think it's a tendency for most of us, especially those coming from the continent, to give up on yourself even before, like, people decide that you cannot do it. You'll be like, I can't do it. I can't apply to Oxford. I can't get in. So do not ever. I'm using examples that are some things that I've gone through, or experiences that I've gone through. But the experiences are different. The key message is that do not give up on yourself. Do not give up on anything that you're passionate about. Take those risks. Failures are part of life, and stay on the goal. One day it will all make sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
I will not add anything to that. So, you will allow me to pause there because I know you are just second year of your PhD, so I'm sure we'll still have another sitting somewhere when you defend your thesis in the coming years, and we'll have more stories to talk about the PhD
Yeah.
journey and all that. But let's wrap up and talk about three questions that I want to ask everyone who comes here. And the first question is, I'm just curious to know or to see the world in the eyes of others. And the question that I'm asking is, and I'm calling it a better world. And I'm asking, from where you stand or from your perspective, what is one thing that you find disturbing or very wrong in the world that if you had all the powers, you would instantly change?
There's a lot of things that I see wrong, but
Okay,
one thing I can
on top
say.
of the list.
One thing I can speak about is the sort of, like, the sort of narrative that we as Africans portray of ourselves, right? Or the sort of narrative that people out there have of Africans and the African continent, that it's a place where there is sickness, there is poverty. They basically describe hell, you know
Mm.
as the African continent. And even when you see all these BBC documentaries, and everything they mentioning is on the other side. So I think what I would change is, number one, I think a lot of people are starting to work towards that, changing the narrative, that the narrative of the continent. And some of the ways we are doing that is by telling these stories, like what you're doing and what I do with the MSJ platform. So giving people a chance to actually tell their stories, and for people to actually relate and see, actually, in Africa there are great things that are happening. Yeah, we have billionaires in Africa. We have people that are doing very innovative stuff in the continent. Given an opportunity, or given a chance, in the continent, there would be a lot of significant change that would happen. if we just do things differently from how we are doing them right now. Yeah. So for like things like healthcare, a lot of people talk about it a lot of times, and the healthcare situation in the continent. If we could just do things slightly differently, no one would think about going abroad to seek for medical intervention or medical um uh procedures. So I think number one is about selling the right narratives about ourselves and doing things a bit differently from how we are doing them. So if I had the power, we are slowly getting there. Yeah. But if I had the power, those are things that I would instantly change. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, thank you. Definitely, I see that, and thank you for sharing about that. The second one is I'm calling it anticipated regret, and it is this concept that I've come to appreciate a lot. That every time I'm at a junction and I want to shy away or shelf ideas because I'm or fear or whatever, I keep asking myself, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, will I regret not having done this thing? And it's really helped me a lot. So I'm curious to know, is there something in your shelf of things? Because I know you're doing a lot of things already, but like, is there something that is currently sitting in your shelf that if you don't do it now, 2 years,
Mm.
5 years to come, you might regret?
Honestly, Gladys, I would I would say no,
Okay.
because you might or might not be aware that I'm sort of like involved with a lot of things, because there's just that spark in me that if I don't do them, then I will regret. So in as much as it's a lot of time commitment here and there, I still I am still doing them or creating time to do them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, I have overcommitted. That would be that would be my weakness, that I have overcommitted to doing a lot of stuff because of the potential of not regretting in future, because I don't want to get to a place and be like, I should have done this or I should have done that.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be more of, how do I take a step back and rethink about what's actually what's actually important. I mean, everything is important as you look at it from one angle, but probably try a different angle and see, is it really worth it, my time, all these things that I'm committing to, with the fear of the fear of unknown. Probably I'll regret, probably I won't regret, but before taking up all these tasks, are they really worth it? Are they really something that, looking back, I would say they consumed my time, they consumed my energy, but they were worth it? You understand? So
Mm-hmm.
I've changed your question a bit, but for me, it would be more about looking back and saying, the things that I committed my time to do, I hope that I don't regret doing them, because it was a lot of time investment, energy investment, everything, money investment that I would have
Mm-hmm.
done, I would have put elsewhere and probably done greater things in that aspect. Yeah.
Mm, mm. No, I like that you brought that perspective. So that makes sense. And I kind of had already guessed because you're doing so much. But like if it will give you some confidence, I think they say psychologists have done research and they find that you might actually regret less. Like if you take on so many things and then at some point you just abandon some because you don't have bandwidth for, then you will actually regret lesser later
Mm.
if you didn't do it
Than
at
not
all.
doing them at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But the weakness of some of us is that once we take up something, there's no letting
Um,
go.
I can relate.
it's
And you want
it's
to give
kaende kaende.
100%.
Yani we have to finish, like, there is no dropping things until they're done. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you want them
yeah.
to shine and be successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the question there would be, what is the toll, or what does it take you to do the things that you want to do in order to not regret in future?
Mm,
Yeah. So
mm.
computing or calculating the cost of engaging in all this stuff and
Mm.
saying, okay, I did them, I do not regret them, but what was the cost?
Yeah. we might need a code, a computer code to do the trade-off. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool.
So actually, I think I should be asking about what is the thing that you might regret not having done, and also asking what do you think you might regret having done, or things that have
Yeah.
consumed so much of your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be a future. That was something that you would answer retrospectively after having done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the last one is like I we talked about briefly earlier is giveaway, and I like this platform to be impactful in a tangible way. I know the stories are impactful, but also I'm trying to see what else can I do, especially to the audience. Most of them are students, and so this third question is a giveaway, and the question I'm asking my guests. The question is there anything you would be willing to give away? It could be a book, it could be time, 20 minutes of your time to a student who is applying for grad school, or just anything along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, like I mentioned 1,000 times, I'm so passionate about mentorship. So I would love to dedicate a bit of my time to mentor one student that is keen on applying to Oxford, particularly because I'm here, or any other Ivy League school. Like I am committing to assisting them with reviewing the application and preparing for a mock interview if they get to that stage, to just ensure that they also get the same opportunity that I got uh, to study in Oxford. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Of course, we are not taking that for granted, and I hope we get a serious student who would want to take this opportunity. So, thank you so much, Ruth, for first of all coming to the show and giving us this time and all these insights, but also like volunteering your time to help one of our students. So, asante sana, and let us wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So that is it for the show today. See you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.